Welcome to the Thank You Life podcast. Today's guest is Kelly Richard. Kelly is a veteran who recently got to experience a ketamine-assisted psychotherapy retreat that Thank You Life funded in collaboration with Healing Our Heroes, which is another nonprofit that's focused on helping veterans get access to psychedelic therapy, and they host retreats. In this episode, Kelly shares her journey as a veteran dealing with military sexual trauma and the subsequent mental health challenges that she faced. She discusses her experience with various therapeutic approaches, including traditional talk therapy and alternative healing methods like sweat lodges and the transformative impact of ketamine therapy. Kelly emphasizes the importance of community support and integration in the healing process, as well as the challenges of accessing affordable mental health care. Her story highlights the profound connections formed during healing journeys, both with oneself and with loved ones, and the ongoing commitment to breaking the cycle of trauma for future generations. If you'd like to learn more about Healing Our Heroes, the foundation that hosted the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy retreat that Kelly is mentioning in this podcast, you can visit their website, healingourheroesflorida.org. And if you'd like to learn more about Thank You Life, you can visit thankyoulife.org. The links will be in the description. And please do leave us a rating, share this episode with your friends if you enjoy it, and make sure you follow us on social media. We hope you enjoy this episode with Kelly Richard.
Thank You Life is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that was started by myself and Dr. Dan Engel in 2022 as a financial assistance fund for psychedelic therapy. Psychedelic therapy is expensive, and 95% of the U.S. population cannot afford its costs. That's where we come in. We partner with over 100 ketamine clinics throughout the U.S. to help clients who cannot afford this treatment. In 2024 alone, we gave over $250,000 away to help 115 people receive this life-changing treatment. This work is not cheap, and it is life-changing. If you feel inspired to give or to become a monthly donor to help more individuals access this treatment, please visit thankyoulife.org/donate or email our Director of Philanthropy, Meredith Thomas, at meredith@thankyoulife.org. Every bit counts, and small monthly donations are especially important to keep this work moving forward. If you can give even $10 to $25 a month, you will join our community of contributors who are changing the lives of so many. Thank you all for your support. This episode of the Thank You Life podcast is proudly supported by Enthea, a mental health company dedicated to providing access to safe and affordable psychedelic-assisted therapy. Like us at Thank You Life, Enthea is committed to removing health equity obstacles that impede access to impactful mental health care. Enthea is a third-party administrator specializing in innovative mental health benefits for employers, including access to ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. As the first and only provider of advanced mental health solutions for the workplace, they enable companies to expand their benefits to include breakthrough therapies that address root causes of mental health challenges. Visit enthea.com to learn more. And now, back to the show. All right. Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for being part of our Thank You Life podcast here.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me.
And so for all the listeners, I'll give a little bit of context of what's happening here. Kelly is a veteran, and I'll have her introduce herself in a moment. And she's participated in 2 Healing Our Heroes retreats, one in Arizona in April, and then a second that Thank You Life was a partner with Healing Our Heroes in September. And that's how we got connected. And so I just want to give a shout out to Healing Our Heroes and Kimberly. Kimberly's the co-founder and also a veteran. And we Thank You Life just began partnering with them. It looks like we're going to have a much bigger partnership with them next year. And we're just super excited about that opportunity. And we love what Kimberly and the whole team is doing there. So Healing Our Heroes is also a 501c3 like Thank You Life. And they're really focused on veterans and first responders and getting them ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, mainly through a retreat model. And so, we'll dive into, what those retreats look like, because that was a bit of your experience, Kelly. Just wanted to give a kind of background on Healing Our Heroes. One thing that's really amazing about what they do is they really, similar to us, really try to limit the cost to the participant, although they have a bit of a different model. Our model is more just, helping the participant pay financially for it, where, what Healing Our Heroes does is get, on one hand, really great deals on food and lodging, but also gets all of the clinical work, the therapists, doctors, etc., to donate their time. And I think that just, cuts down the price tremendously. Um, and so, yeah, little shout out to Healing Our Heroes. And yeah, welcome, Kelly. And will you just tell us a little bit about your background as a veteran?
Of course. Um, I joined the military when I was 17, so mom and dad had to sign off on my paperwork to enlist. I retired about 16 years later. I was medically discharged. I not really wanted to do it that way, but that's the way it turned out. And so it's worked out over the long
Mhm.
term because my mental health benefits are by and large covered by the VA, as are most of my medical benefits covered by the VA. I'm glad I joined. I'm glad I went in. It was a good experience overall. There were some military traumas that led to continued need for treatment over life. So um, I'd do it again, but I think I would do it a little differently. We try to defend our country, but how do you defend yourself? Uh,
Mm, Ooh, I have not heard that before, but I love that. Yeah, both are important.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and will you talk a little bit about your path from getting out of the military and then beginning to seek out psychedelics? Um, Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm seeing a screenshot that says reconnecting, so I don't know if we're actually connected or not. The app is undergoing a
Okay.
connection process. Thank you for your patience. So since the record button is still on, we just keep going. Nope, you're frozen. Oh dear. I'm back with you, Kevin. Nope. I think we're back on. Can you hear me now, Kevin?
Okay. After some technical difficulties, we're back. Um, so yeah, you were sharing a little bit about, or I guess I was asking you about like, so you went through the military for 16 years. You said you had some trauma from that. Sounds like some physical and some mental health things.
Right.
Um,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say like, when was all that, and were you like on active duty, or were you in combat at all?
I was not in combat. I was um, at that time. It's from 1980 to 1996 was my time of service. The language used for that is military sexual trauma. And of course, when
Mm-hmm.
there's physical assault and other aggressions, then the language again now is the body keeps the score. So while I was on active duty, mental health was not an acknowledged um, experience one could have and stay on active duty. So if any one time I went sideways in my career, I would lose my income. I would lose my job. I would lose the resources that kept a roof over my head and food in my belly and daycare for my kids. So I couldn't talk freely with anybody who I worked with about my experiences. I'd keep
So
it all
yeah, you couldn't
compressed.
really go, yeah, you couldn't actually go get support.
No, that
Uh,
was, you could get support but lose your career. You would be
right.
discharged, and inevitably that is what eventually happened.
Mm,
Because there was an event that was just too intense that caused me to have problems at work that I wasn't able to suppress. It just started coming out sideways. So I ended
mm,
up in, the mid 90s going to seek therapeutic help. And then I was medically discharged for having mental health problems.
mm. And how did those show up for you, if you don't mind sharing? Was it kind of PTSD symptoms
It was
or
the PTSD symptoms, feeling like I had to be on a chronic watch. I could trust no experience environment. I wasn't safe. I was randomly crying. I was randomly
mm,
just numbing out to the point where I wasn't present for a meeting, or I wasn't present to hear what was going on in the room. At one point I got under my desk and just stayed under my desk for about a half hour because
mm.
I felt so threatened by what was going on in the room. And that's a tough place to be.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I hear a lot of that hypervigilance. And then, yeah, I also just, ha- so I'm a psychotherapist by training, and, a lot of the like body keeps the score sort of stuff is what I was trained in. And so, yeah, I just hear your nervous system screaming for an opportunity to work through the trauma, and at the same time trying to keep you safe, like trying to keep you safe, but also like with the crying and stuff. I just imagine I'm not sure if you're familiar with Peter Levine's work, but like, the animal when it finally does get to safety, just wanting to like crawl in a hole and kind of shake it all out of the system. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just hear that there was no safe place for you to go do that really, and go
No,
talk through what happened.
I could scream in my car from the place where our carpool met and dropped off to the
Mm,
2 miles to my front door. And then I had to be a mom.
mm,
So mask on
yeah.
at home, mask on at work. And then the mask didn't keep in the intense emotions, because it comes to the point where those emotions need to be experienced, and not being able to feel the emotions without feeling like I was going to implode or explode and harm the people around me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It required other coping skills that weren't working for me. Yeah.
So you eventually go to seek some therapeutic help,
hmm
and this is now, you were saying, the mid 90s. And so what did that look like for you? Was it some talk therapy, and how did that work for you? Was it at least helpful somewhat?
It Let me back up just a little bit, because the
Yeah,
intensity of
please.
the emotions got to the point where I had no care or concern for my children. So I knew
Mm,
logically I'm in trouble because nothing matters, and I wanted to take my life. And I'm in
mm,
a bedroom closet with a loaded gun, and I want to end everything because everything is too hard. So I know I'm in
mm,
trouble, and I had just received my orders to retire under a different program, Early Retirement Authority. And okay, I'm good now. I've got a pension, I've got income, I'll be okay to retire. So that was Friday. Got my orders. It's like, really, you can wait till Monday, go to the hospital, go see the
mm,
doc. And I
mm,
did that, and I was admitted to the hospital. So some of the medications that they tried were I was allergic to. They completely numbed out my body or swelled up my tongue. There was talk therapy involved. There was a lot of, um, I remember an admiral killing himself while I was hospitalized, and thinking he was successful and I wasn't. Like, but you've got kids,
mm.
you've got things to take care of, you've got other things in life to do. So I really need to try whatever they're offering. And they offered a lot of medications. I'm sure there were group talk conversations. Uh, I remember the TV being on in the day room and the movie that Mel Gibson is in, where Braveheart. And I'm just going,
Hmm.
I'm watching a rape scene on a movie and I'm in the hospital because I can't handle the fact that I can't deal with the trauma behind my rape scene. This is
Mm.
all very
Mm.
inside out and backwards. So the long story of my healing journey is that I was on more than 37 different not psychotropic, psychiatric medications for
Yeah.
treatment of the PTSD and the major depression that came about and just stayed. Some of them would make me feel very numbed out. So I wasn't happy and I wasn't sad, but I wasn't suicidal, but I wasn't really engaged or feeling like I was alive.
Yeah.
And other medications had me feeling good for a little bit. When I say good, like, okay, I can be happy, I can smile again, but its effect wasn't long lasting. Um, so kind of lather, rinse, repeat over the years. I'd try them for a while, I'd get off of them for a while. And I went to sweat lodges with the Native American community to try to help face my issues and resolve some of that vacant feeling inside, that emptiness, that vacuum of why am I here? I'm just struggling to get through every day.
Mm.
And the sweat lodges really gave me a community and a connection to healers that was useful, helpful. I felt like I could process a lot of it verbally by speaking um, to the events instead of not being able to talk about it to anybody because I'd lose my job.
So that, yeah, that helped kind of open the just yeah, like open the door a little bit, so some expression could at least start coming out.
It's important to be able to start to cry
Mm.
and feel the reasons that I'm crying. It's important to learn to feel the feelings where I'm feeling them, and that's been a really tough journey to reconnect because I spent so many years, decades really, severing that cord from feeling that emotion in the body to the only thing I felt was depression. And
So it sounds like, at first your own response, which is so natural, was to try to, as you were saying, suppress, repress, cut yourself off, numb,
Mhm.
and then the medical community finally gets to come in, but they basically just kind of double down on that tactic that you were already trying to do. Like, okay, well, here's some psychiatric meds that can help you kind of numb and not feel, not feel, not feel. And yeah, I mean, as we know from things like the body keeps a score,
Yeah,
well, what's going to happen? Like that stuff isn't moving; it's still in there.
yeah.
And so it sounds like the sweat lodges were the first place where perhaps you just started turning toward and were able to face, cry, be with the stuff that was bottled up inside.
Yes, sweat lodges are fantastic in that they provide this dark womb-like experience. And I went to the sweat
Mm.
lodges that are not the intense sonic heat. There is heat, but it isn't designed to burn the tops of your ears. It's designed to be more like a womb-like comforting experience. And we had a really fantastic um, person who led our healing sessions, who allowed us to express um, and limit it to 5 to 10 people. And so the
Yeah.
experience was one of safety and support and freedom to express exactly what is the experience for each person in that lodge. No judgment, no counseling, no guidance, direction of, it was just like be the natural healer that you are.
Mm. Yeah, I've done many sweats, and a lot of them were, yeah, kind of like you're talking about, like more smaller group, which was, yeah, really lovely and intimate. And yeah, I really get that. Like, what I'm hearing, it's like the community piece is there. And then this more just direct connection to spirit, or just, our own spirituality, however that is for us. And
Exactly.
yeah, this place I think it's so important to have a place to articulate and express, pray, even if we want to use that word,
Mm-hmm.
and to be seen in that by community. And, I'm a therapist. I think therapy has such great value and such a place, but also where, kind of like you're saying, okay, there's no like follow up. I was witnessed, and then there's not like, let's unpack that further. It's just cool.
And
I
that's
got
where
to be
therapy does
witnessed.
come in. Yeah. You get to be
Totally.
witnessed in the sweat lodge, but that therapy that integration piece is so important.
Yeah.
And if I can, I'm going to jump to the ketamine aspect, because I've
Please.
been receiving ketamine from the VA in Albuquerque since 2021. So I'd had over 100 IV ketamine sessions before I went to
Wow.
my first Healing Our Heroes retreat. And the I almost said business model, but the model in the Albuquerque VA is that here's your aspirin, now go home and get better. And we really, many of us, not everybody, but many of us really need that unpacking aspect, what I'll call the aspirin with the hug. I need the aspirin with the hug. I need to know that um, what I experienced in my ketamine journey can be processed, validated, unpacked, and then used in a way to enhance my life today. And that
Mm-hmm.
was for, when Kimberly Juravieski set up the Healing Our Heroes of Florida model, she really put so much thought into not only the experience, but the follow-on experience. So we do the retreat, and then we have 6 weeks of weekly sessions as a group, and then we can continue on as a group by choice. And we did that at the last retreat, and we've done that this retreat. We're on our 6th week this week, I think, where we actually once a week get together as that group and talk about how the ketamine is continuing to impact our life. That 4-week crash that happens after the retreat, we hold each other in that space to say this is totally
Mm-hmm.
normal to go through this crash, and we're here to support each other. We understand what it's like to do this. For me, the ketamine journey began after a failed course of 9 ECT, which is electroconvulsive therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and many more other attempts with addressing the treatment-resistant depression, or the major depression, after a trauma in 2018. And I'm 50 plus years old. I'm not supposed to have traumas like this anymore. I'm supposed to be coping and dealing and managing my life, because I have been through so much therapy and helpful therapy. But here I am experiencing another trauma, and the default is to go back to those old coping skills: drinking too much, eating too much, numbing out,
Shutting down. Yeah.
shutting down. And so the ketamine moved me out of the suicidal cycle, but it took about 13 ketamine sessions before I truly felt that the suicidal part of me found something else to do. And it was not till ketamine session 18 that I felt joy show up for a few hours. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, I'm a slow responder, but this is working. So I now have
And
hope
so,
again.
just for clarity too, number 13, number 18, this is all in the like 100 IV that you're doing with the
These are
VA.
the first 100 IV sessions. It was the first 13 before suicide stopped.
Right. And
It
there
was
was, and so this was just a ketamine, kind of the aspirin without the hug model. This was
right.
just a ketamine infusion. No real therapist in the room, or the integration afterwards.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
In my first 3 sessions, I had these big anxiety meltdowns for 45 minutes. And since I was in the
Mm.
hospital, I had technicians, psychiatric nurses in the room with me, reassuring me I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. But there was not that, it was, here's some hydro, I don't remember the name of the calm you down medicine, but
Yeah.
here's to stop you from crying. Here's to stop you from not sleeping. More medication. So they're doing the best that they can with the model that they've been asked to work in.
100%.
But
100%.
the opportunity to unpack and integrate is not there. The hug isn't there. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I hear you talk about those 3 like anxiety meltdowns, and for the model I work in, I'm like, oh, perfect. That sounds so potent. If you have, like a somatic based therapist to really let you move all of that through the body, that's the trauma right there, wanting to leave.
Yeah, that's the moving and the shake it out. And so
Right.
it instead of, the question came up, are you delirious? It's like, no, I'm not delirious. I'm just having a wailing fest because all of this anxiety and all of this suppressed emotion needs to come out somewhere. And if you're at the VA, you can't be angry. It's not safe to be angry there, because if you're angry and you take it out in any angry way, you're going to be escorted every time you go to the VA after that.
You're listening to the Thank You Life podcast because you're interested in hearing inspiring stories about people's personal growth, transformation, and healing with psychedelics. And that's awesome because those stories are really powerful and they deserve to be heard. But if you are anything like me, you are also interested in what's happening out in the world to make these substances, these medicines, more accessible and available to everyone. So my name is Henry Winslow, and I created a free email newsletter called Tricycle Day that helps you do just that. Every week, I send 2 issues that take about 5 minutes to read, so not a huge time commitment at all, but they'll get you caught up on what's happening in psychedelic research, policy reform, and this emerging industry that's unfolding in real time. So if that sounds like something you would like to check out, just go to tricycleday.com, and there you can enter your email and you'll be good to go. So with that said, I'm super happy to be supporting Thank You Life, and let's get back to the podcast.
This episode of the Thank You Life podcast is proudly supported by Dr. Bronner's, a brand that believes in more than just making great soap. As a dedicated corporate sponsor of Thank You Life, Dr. Bronner's is helping us break down barriers to mental health care, advancing our mission to providing life-changing access to psychedelic therapy for those in need. Together, we're making healing possible for underserved communities across the country. So next time you see that iconic bottle on the shelf, know that Dr. Bronner's isn't just providing that refreshing shower. They're also invested in improving access to mental health care for everyone. Thank you, Dr. Bronner's, for being a true partner in healing. Visit drbronner's.com to learn more. Now back to the show.
So anger is not a safe emotion, but you can cry. So my brain went through all of those decisions. It's like, yes, you're hostile. The angry is so huge. It's so big. But if you're angry, they're going to kick you out. So cry.
Wow. So you at least got to move something, and at least a piece of it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. And what's just a comment here is like, it's so interesting, the model that Thank You Life works in, we work with over 100 ketamine clinic partners, but we make sure that they are all doing KAP, ketamine assisted psychotherapy. So it's not just an infusion. There is that extra support. And I also hear how it was definitely not ideal, but also what, was helpful. Although I still just wish that there can be really well-trained therapists there too, because I think it can just help so much more.
I think that the ketamine assisted mindfulness model provides such a comprehensive space for one to understand and connect the dots inside. What is going on that my body feels this pain? What is going on that I'm not able to articulate or express myself the way I want to with my partner, because I'm thinking I'm saying this, but my partner is hearing and understanding that. Because the perspectives need to align, and they can't align until you understand there needs to be a shift. And I can't understand there needs to be a shift until that looking through that prism of my trauma and my pain is somehow adjusted. It's got to be, I don't know how to say, tuned in. It's got to be on a similar frequency. And for the ketamine experience, for me, moving into the Healing Our Heroes of Florida model, is that we're given the therapy beforehand in a group setting. And so we kind of rip off the wounds a little bit. So there is some present pain, if you will.
Yeah, kind of ripening your cells, or yeah, totally.
And not having done that before, it was kind of scary for me. Like, why are we going this dark place when we're getting ready to do something so lovely as take this ketamine journey? But then going through the ketamine journey as a group, being able to feel each other heal through that group ketamine experience was profoundly different than the, here's your medication, go home and heal model. This was, here's your medication. We as a group experience this journey together, and now we can process this together as a group. We all have our individual traumas. Some people are combat veterans. Some people are COVID medical provider veterans, So we all have our individual traumas that we're healing, but we have this group experience that assists, that supportive, you're not alone. Here's a connection. You won't be alone. So express it as authentically as you can, because the healing belongs to you, and you can heal through this. You can get past this.
Yeah, thanks for speaking to how powerful the group piece of it is.
It astounded me. I honestly was not expecting that part of it to show up. The first group therapy in Young, Arizona, where we talked about the ketamine-assisted mindfulness aspect of it, it just blew my mind wide open to there's a whole nother piece that the VA, in my experience, is missing out on by, and it may be a matter of finances or space or resources or time, but ever since then, whenever my husband can join me in a CAT, he sits in the room with me. He records what he can of what I see, describe, and experience. And I'd like to touch on that too before we close. And then he reads it back to me within an hour or two of my CAT session. So I can then bring back into the real world those images and gifts and messages that I received in what I call CAT land. And then integrate that into my daily life. Is my daily life easy now? No. Is my daily life still without sadness or depression? There's still things that linger and still things that need to be worked on. I don't want to pass this as a magic panacea that resolved everything in 1 or 2 retreats. Has it moved me forward into my journey of making changes in my life, saying, this is all I can do today. I don't have to push myself to the point of exhaustion anymore, because that's a trauma-based response. I don't have to say, no, I don't need your help, when I do, because saying I don't need help is a trauma-based response. So the ketamine experience has allowed me to feel that instead of know it. Like logically, I get it, but I don't often allow myself to feel that. So the ketamine added to my therapeutic experience, my therapeutic journey, has given me more bandwidth.
And to me, that's like an interesting kind of take on integration. I think we often understand integration as more like the sober stuff after the kind of altered state experience. And what I also hear in you, which I've definitely had my own experience with this, is like, if the starting point is an intellectual understanding that we can't quite embody yet, then there's actually an integration that happens in the altered state experience if I'm able to integrate this thing that's only been an intellectual understanding, but okay, now I actually get to feel it. That's its own integration and a very important experience, because we can understand, and I think this is the limitation that people often find with talk therapy when their talk therapy isn't quite enough, is like, cool, I get it intellectually, the reasoning in my brain, it all adds up, and there's some sort of block here to embodying it, which is
And
often just how intense the trauma is, and how much kind of resistance or blockades how we armor ourselves to not feel because it was so intense to feel.
I think when ACEs are high, when your childhood trauma is also part of your life story, then that's a survival mechanism that's just so hardwired. It's in the tapestry, it's in the base model. You can't really give yourself a new program and a new program and a new program and upgrade. And that's still there. Though that armor of survival is still there. So that's still a go-to. And I have a wonderful trauma-based therapist right now, and she would say, to heal, you have to feel. Like, okay, I'm crying. Is that good? But where do I feel it in my body? It's really hard. Where do I feel it right now in my body? Is really hard. So I can go to depression pretty quick, and I can go to freeze it all out, numb it all out pretty quick. I can go to people pleasing really quick. But can I go that quickly? So it was probably 2 or 3 years of our talk therapy weekly before I had the experience of, oh, that's what she means. And that was after our first ketamine retreat with Healing Our Heroes of Florida, that I had that. That's what she's talking about.
So you're working with this trauma therapist for a couple years.
Yeah.
Do your first Healing Our Heroes retreat where there gets to be the psychotherapy added to the ketamine, and after that you're able to embody it more, really actually feel it in your body more. Amazing. And yeah, I think this is why we describe psychedelics as a tool in the toolbox. As you said, it's not a panacea. And this is an example to me of how it's a tool, because somatic trauma-based therapy is also amazing. And as we can see, sometimes that altered state experience can actually help us in the sober trauma healing. And yeah, it's like, I mean, for you, it sounds like it was, really indispensable to be kind of knocking at the door for 2 years and then do this retreat and then really kind of get to walk through at least that door, not like it's the final door, but a door.
And the ketamine assisted mindfulness aspect of it really helped me realize that it is a daily practice. It is a daily, it is ongoing. I want to talk a little bit about the what I call Ketland, the journey of being in the ketamine space.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I have done the intravenous, the IV, I've done the IM, and I've done the Spravato. And I had 3 very different experiences with that. And I'll start with the Spravato because Spravato, for me, increased my depression. And I thought I was just doing the nocebo effect with it, but there were other veterans who were also suspended from the IV program who were in the waiting room waiting to get back to the IV program when it was reintroduced months later, who had the same experience. We couldn't wait to get back to the IV because we knew the IV experience worked. So for me, I can't speak to Spravato being effective because it had the opposite effect. I was more depressed. The IM, which is the intramuscular injection, is a very fast acting and it wears off very fast. So the journey is like 15 minutes versus the intravenous, which is a 40-minute journey. And I'm thinking, well, the medicine is the medicine. Just take the medicine because I need my aspirin. And I look forward to when I don't need it. I really want to be in a place where I had my last ketamine IV 7 years ago, and I'm still unpacking, but I'm still happy and functional and with it,
Yeah.
not depressed.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm doing the IV model, which is for me, more often than for most people, but it wears off for me very fast. So I get between 7 and 14 days another IV infusion. So I'm going to
And this is
describe
still not with therapy.
it is.
Although you
I have a trauma therapist I see weekly, but it is
right,
not.
right.
It is a get the medicine and go home. It is not a get the
Yeah.
medicine and do the ketamine assisted mindfulness therapy approach, which is what we had at the retreat.
Correct. Right. Got it.
Yeah. So I want to describe a little bit of the magic, if you will.
Yeah.
The IV ketamine, it takes about 10 minutes for me to start to feel the numbness in my mouth and my nose. My calmness starts to settle in. I feel more and more calm as every breath goes by. Then I start to see dark colors, and I'm the person that closes their eyes. I can't see a red apple or a green apple or a purple horse. But when I do ketamine, I start to see colors. So it's usually darker colors that turn into the expanse of the universe. And I feel like I'm in this little vessel that's just taking me on this fantastic journey of connection and beauty. And from the mountains of Sedona Desert, Arizona to Washington State, to Hawaii, it's just so beautiful, the imagery that comes up. And if I were a painter or at a GoPro, I would be so excited to share this gallery of beauty, because every single time it's so much visual beauty that unfolds and unfolds. But then there's the weird stuff. Last week I had, and it's probably because I'm in Sun City, Arizona, everything's plastic, like walking down Michael's craft store, and everything's getting ready for us ice skating. It all felt very plastic, but I'm a mountains girl. I need my nature. I like rural. And so to be in the city feels very plastic to me. And so that was sort of scary. How do I stay curious? How do I stay present? How do I stay interested in something that's scary to me? Because sometimes it can be scary what shows up in those visual images. While they're fascinating and they're beautiful, sometimes I can feel very enclosed and cocooned, and other times I feel expansive and free, but all of this without feeling my body, because I'm disconnected. The ketamine disconnects me from feeling the chronic physical pain that's there with the complex regional pain syndrome and the right shoulder pain. But how awesome I get to be free of pain for that 40 minutes. And when my husband can sit with me and journal the descriptions, then I can review that with him a couple of hours after the ketamine and bring those visions back, and then the feelings that came with it. And then notice, where do I feel these feelings in my body right now after the ketamine wears off? Oh, I feel that in my stomach. And letting myself feel that. I feel that in my stomach. I want it to feel it sounds weird, but I want it to feel as intense as it can so it can release.
What I hear in this is that you're really doing the work.
It's
And
powerful.
I love that you set all this up for yourself, and really, having your husband support you with it, and then really taking the time afterwards to okay, I saw and touched beauty and expansiveness, but I didn't quite feel it in my body. Let's go back and remember those things, remember the imagery, and now feel it in my body. Well done. Well done. Brilliant work.
Yes, it's cathartic, it's cleansing, it's calming, and it takes away some of that distance that I think as trauma survivors has to be put in place. I can't be connected because it's too scary to be on that edge of connection. It makes me vulnerable and subject to more trauma. But that's not where life is. Living life in that numbness or living life in that disconnect leads to more numbness and more disconnect and more trauma. So for me, the way I see myself as the warrior is to today be the person that breaks the cycle, but I have to do it within myself before I can help anybody else through.
Yeah. 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 Hearing you say that, I think of, I think of how I've heard disorganized attachment talked about, where like for a child, if the parent is the source of love, but also the source of fear and danger, like what a fucking conundrum for the psyche of a child. And I really hear that with you talking about the, really living life and on that, edge of the moment and in connection where there's this draw to it because that's where life really happens and you can feel alive and experience the beauty. Yet that's also what makes you vulnerable and what your systems are telling you to avoid in a really intelligent way to avoid the trauma. So yeah, again, it's just like what a conundrum. And I feel a lot of reverence for people who can, in the midst of all of that, still say, wow, this can be hard, but I'm also going to keep turning toward life and doing my best to live, even though it can be really fucking scary.
And that image came to me in one of the ketamine journeys. I'm in Ketland and I'm on this ice skating thing, and all of a sudden it turns into a razor blade. And if I go left, I'm going to fail. And if I go right, I'm going to fail. And it's this razor. I'm literally on a razor blade. I'm like, and so I realized in that moment, bringing it back into real world, that I am frozen in my life. I'm not functioning in my life. And I want to be able to engage in my life, because if I only have 20 more good years, I want to be shedding that. I want to be in a broad meadow or a big ocean or, space where I can just spread out and be vibrantly alive. And that again is, it's probably always there. I probably didn't necessarily need ketamine to get there. But after decades of not being able to get there through the other modalities, I am so grateful for that experience. And I'm going to continue to do the healing work, and I'll continue to take the meds until my brain and body are like, yeah, we're good now.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and hearing you talk about that razor edge, I'm like, oh yeah, like of course hypervigilance makes sense if you're on that razor edge. Of course, kind of freezing so you don't fall off this way or that way makes sense. And yeah. And I noticed like my own kind of core kind of tightening when you were talking about that. And then the relaxing and you're like, yeah, but I just want to be in a meadow or in that expansive space.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious, were the ketamine I'll just say, my intermuscular experiences have more been like 45 minutes. I've not done IV yet. So interesting that yours seem to be like 15 minutes or so. Yeah, that sounds super quick. So the Healing Our Heroes was the IM experiences.
Yes. And they address that with
how
me.
were those?
Yeah. So the care providers there are phenomenal. I'd actually met one of them in the practice before I went to the retreat. She's a provider in the community where we stay in the wintertime. And she and her husband, well, I won't go into their story, but it's phenomenal how they got involved in doing ketamine in the first place and providing for the community. But they listened to my experiences with IM and IV, and so they did 2 separate injections about 15 minutes apart so that I could extend that journey. So for some people that are hypermetabolizers, the medicine goes through very quickly. And I happen to be one of those people when the IM happens. And I will say that because time is being mentioned, that ketamine in the journey bends and alters time in a way that it seems like 5 minutes is 5 hours and 5 hours is 20 seconds. It completely bends one's perception of time. But I've only had, I think, I want to say maybe 9 IM experiences, a couple with the San Diego VA, because we travel and we like to travel and stay well. But the IM experience for me is very short-lived. But the Healing Our Heroes people were like, yep, we know this, and this is what we're going to do to compensate for that. Are you okay with that? It's extremely tailored and individualized approach to the medicine, and that is so smart because we are not each going to respond the same way to ketamine. With the IV, if you're having an adverse experience, the IV can be stopped right away. So that's the benefit. And it's also 100% bioavailable into your system. It's, to me, a more gentle entry and a more gentle re-entry with the IV ketamine versus the intramuscular IM. But having done both now for, I'd still prefer the IV, but I would use the IM again in a future retreat without hesitation.
Yet the IM is often described more like a rocket ship.
Yes, I hate to use the word because it's so, but it's like I'm being smacked upside the head with the IM. It's like, it's here. I don't have time to take off my glasses or adjust my hearing aids or my mask. You better be ready for everything when the IM is inserted because it's there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember these couple moments. I've only had a few IM experiences, but because there is about maybe 90 seconds, 2 minutes where they've injected it and I haven't blasted off yet, but I'm just like, okay, I've heard about this. Like, here it is. Like any moment now, I am going to be off into the stars.
Yes, it's an immediate disassociation. There's no gentleness about it. Yeah, you're going to the stars. You're there. You're there.
So yeah, I'm curious if there's any other pieces of your experiences in Catland, as you call it, that you want to share about. It sounds like it's a space where sometimes you get to experience a lot of beauty that you really try to pull back into life. Experience a lot of connection was another word that I heard. Yeah, like any other pieces or particular experiences that stand out that feel potent or meaningful?
It's interesting, Kevin, that when you asked that question, for me, Ketland is if you ever watch The Matrix, it's sort of like, you're removed because your body's here, but your mind and your understanding of the world is completely, it's otherworldly. It's completely detached from Earth, planet Earth. But what came to mind was my sister died last November 2nd, and I had just finished the series of TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, 30-day course, 45-day course, along with the ketamine. So it was a combined approach. And I honestly don't believe I would have been able to be her caretaker without that additional support. And so my sister has come into Ketland, and she comes in and she's big and she's happy and look for me in the profile of the sunset and a skyscraper when you're in the city, because she knows how much I dislike the city. Look for me on the waves and the sand, and my profile will be in the sand and the foam of the sea. And
wow.
So I get this amazing connection with her joy. And I can't demand, like I try to experiment when I'm in Catland. Can I change this red color to black? Can I change this geometric shaft to a tunnel? I can't. I'm totally out of control with whatever pops up in Catland. I can only be curious and accept and be interested, or I can shy away from. And I find when I shy away from things, they tend to reappear in other parts of the journey. I've seen deceased pets. I asked my sister to wake up my grandma. She said, no, she's asleep. Let her sleep. But then she shows me how she can turn her dog into a balloon. And so it brings me joy. But the subtleties are also what I was not ever expecting, because people typically describe, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry, but they don't really get into the more subtle emotions. So the last few sessions have been really technical and more scientific and logical, which I kind of love because I'm a little bit nerdy.
Yeah.
But the subtleties of the emotion that we don't often think of, like, I'm not just calm, I'm feeling serene. I'm not just suspended in space. I'm feeling this must be what nirvana is. This
Mm,
must be what bliss is. So I'm getting goosebumps describing these little things that we don't often talk about as emotions, but it's almost like the electrical switches are coming back on. I'm at the breaker box and go, okay, what's this one feel like? What's this emotion feel like? Let me find another emotion to feel. Um, so yeah, Catland is this really neat gift, and it's also built up this private little safe space for me in my head.
yeah.
Call them the sentient beings that come in and they show me, reveal to me what's already here, my healing that's already available to me when I let go of that armor. So
Mm,
to me, that's probably the most powerful one, is saying, you already have the gift. This is just allowing you to access the healing that's already within your DNA. My DNA holds the key to my healing. I just need to be able to access that expanse and the connection that exists.
wow. There's a lot there. And, what one thought is like, I really hear that it's such a kind of training ground and like place of learning that you go to. And, man, hearing you talk about trying to change things, and then it sounds like there's this learning that's coming that, um, of both like, okay, all I can do is either be curious and open or shy away, which sounds just like a little more close. So on one hand, I think that is just an amazing learning that, and it reminds me of, I did a really cool retreat in Costa Rica last year, and the therapist there was saying the same kind of thing. She was saying, I think everything is either that we're relaxed and open or that we're like tense and closed. And that's like really the only distinction ever happening. And I so hear that in you. It's like, okay, I can't change things. I can either be open or closed. And if I'm closed, the things keep coming back. If I'm open, then I imagine it's something more like they work themselves through as they need. But yeah, what a beautiful microcosm to get to work with, but to me is like, really core spiritual teachings and just really core, learning of how to be a human and how to be with this existence that we're in.
Very well said. I think for me, the goal is that the self healing and then sharing the possibility of healing is available for each of us, that'll take down the road rage on the highways a notch. That'll take down
Mm,
the abuse in our communities a bigger notch, that the domestic violence doesn't have to be part of every person's experience or many people's experience, because we're doing the work. And I think the earlier we can be taught to do the work, you know, or maybe even just because trauma may be inevitable, because there are hurricanes and there are wars and there are things that happen that are beyond human control, that aren't human inflicted traumas. Although some would say climate change is human inflicted. But for me, that's, if I can leave a legacy in this world, it is that my experience would be able to allow others to access their own right to heal and their own right to live a better healing life instead of a constant repeat of hard depression, fight against it, because repelling it, blocking out the vulnerability does not heal us. And I want healing to happen. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Gosh, that has me reflect on the light that we get to be when we've done our own healing. And I think it's this thing where it's like I was going to use the word promise, maybe that's not the right word, but it's like some sort of promise or reflection where it's like, okay, well, here's one example, and in some ways all we need is one example of somebody who's had trauma and has healed at least some degree and is still healing, and that is enough to say it's possible to be in a human body or be a human with intense trauma and to find healing. And I'm an example of that. Here you go.
Exactly.
And yeah, the light that can be for people and the hope that can be for people.
And I like the word promise. I like the word promise. Yeah. It's a promise. Yeah.
If you don't mind, there's like one or two other things on my mind, and then I think we can wrap up.
Of course.
So yeah, I was saying that there was a lot there when you were describing a bit more of Catland. The other piece that really sticks out is the connection. So it's like, connection can be such a broad term, and my experience certainly is that ketamine provides connection on a lot of different realms, and the kind of personal relationships with pets and siblings and family, etc., friends, and then also this like being able to feel connection in that realm in a way that really breaks the barrier between the living and the deceased, so to speak. And that's, I just want to name how much of a theme that is for people that, I think of one woman who was also a Thank You Life recipient who, shared on video how she got to be really connected with her deceased son. And her main trauma was the sort of, depression and grief that she went into from her 18-year-old son passing. And she did a 3 similar to you, but not quite in a retreat, but it was a group cohort that, kind of one ketamine session a month. And most of her time was really just spent connecting with her son and kind of, finding some closure with everything and just getting to enjoy him and his presence and his connection. And, I think that kind of stuff can be so important to us all.
Absolutely. Being able to access such a connection and explore the grief, explore the emotions, explore the great memories. I don't think of my sister and automatically weep. My first go-to is when I was in Ketland and she's showing me how big she is and how, big as in, her personality, her spirit, her presence is not diminished by her death. Her presence is magnified. And it just made me so much more grateful for being able to be there with her when she drew her last breath. And, our pets have shown up. We lost 10 people the same year my sister died. My nephew died of a fentanyl overdose. Anyway, I won't go into all the details, but there was really a lot of grieving and a lot of death last year. And the ketamine does allow one to feel those connections in a safe space. So I'm trying to practice that same feeling of connection in real life. And when I come to, oh, this is hard. Oh, this relationship is hard. I come to those barriers and those walls. It's like, okay, then I try to explain it logically because that's where my brain goes. Okay, they're an externalizer. They have to get it off their chest. They can't handle the internal tension. So they're going to barf all over everybody, their sickness, their grief, their anger. And what is my role here? My role is to make myself feel respected and honored for trying to make a connection and say it's okay to wait because they're not in a space right now to do that. One of my first ketamine sessions that was outside of the VA because we were traveling, the veteran who was administering the dose, I asked him if he had tried ketamine and he said yes. And I said, what was your experience? And he said, I realized that it's not her fault. And he's talking about his partner. And my thinking is if one dose of ketamine can bring us that connection to ourselves and that relationships around us, it's not a panacea, it's not magic. But if you even in little doses get back in touch with the human that we are, that's worth every bit of fighting we have to do to get this to be covered, affordable, accessible, for anyone who's in a mental health state of mind that this would be effective approach for managing a treatment. Add it to the toolbox, like you said.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Will you speak a little bit to the affordability piece? And, it sounds like for you, you've been able to have this covered by the VA, and then, Healing Our Heroes, those retreats have been, it sounds like so a real minimum investment on the side of the participants based on a little bit of our support from Thank You Life and how Healing Our Heroes sets it up, as we were saying earlier. So I guess, can you speak to just how that's been for you to be in the position that you're in, to be able to receive these things where, by and large for people, it can cost $5,000 to $10,000 to receive a treatment series?
I'll be glad to. I have a fairly broad-based experience with the ketamine, and because my husband and I like to travel. And so initially the ketamine was all through the VA, all covered because of the program that the Albuquerque VA had set up. And my provider specifically has been doing ketamine for mental health for over 15 years. So geriatric, he treated one patient who was 72. She only needed one treatment, but he's treated others who after 5 years are still getting, fairly frequent, weekly treatments. So there's a broad base of treatment needs out there. He would say we are each an N of one. In other words, we need our treatment tailored to our individual needs. But because my husband and I like to travel, we've been to other places in the United States where we've done self-pay. And so Virginia Beach, Virginia was $450 because the VA does not offer it. In the East Coast is pretty tight about it. The West Coast is pretty loose about it. So I can get treatment at the San Diego VA, no problem. But in Arizona, community care is covered. So there are documents that say, if you're in the Veterans VA system and you're disabled vet of 10% or more, the treatment may be accessible depending on which silo of the VA your zip code is in. But there are more and more of us are gathering the information, sharing the information that these are the documents that the head of psychiatric care for the VA says, yes, it's authorized. This is what you do to go about getting it. Now, is it that easy? No. Some veterans do and some veterans don't. So back to the self-pay, where we live is 2.5 hours from the VA each way. So that's 40 days of our life on the road for my treatments. So we have elected to put everything in storage and find another place to live where we have access to the treatment. If we stayed in our region, the lowest price available is $650 per treatment, and that's after a $395 intake. So you're dropping $1,000 before you even get your first treatment.
Yeah.
And it's not covered by insurance. The most affordable place that we've been to is run by 2 veterans in Colorado Springs. And their ketamine intake is, I think, $95. Close to that. I might be wrong on that by a few dollars. And it's $250 for ketamine mental health, and I think $500 for a pain infusion treatment. So much more affordable. The range is all over the place. When I first got to Arizona, I was paying $500 each time. So before I was able to access the community care approach under the VA umbrella, we were paying $500 for each treatment. And it was in a very noisy, obnoxiously uncatified space to be in. I was in the middle of a treatment area, and there's alarms going off, and it's a pain clinic. So $500 later, I'm leaving, and I just passed out because it's so not the setup you want for a good quality ketamine experience. And having said that, I was able to get my first Medicare reimbursement for a ketamine treatment that I had earlier this year. But it's all about how it's coded. And it's all about how, because all of the other ones that I submitted were rejected from Medicare for reimbursement. And it's not a 100% reimbursement, but some is better than nothing. And we choose to use on our retired fixed military income to reinvest those dollars into the next retreat treatment. So it's expensive. And ketamine itself is so excessively inexpensive. It's so affordable as a drug itself. Costs add up when there are expenses. You've got to pay for the overhead. You've got to pay for the insurance. You've got to pay for the people who process your insurance. You've got to pay for the caregivers. There's so much cost involved just to set up a ketamine clinic. So I get that, to be in business, there is an inherent bottom line expense. However, for the rate to go from $275 to $650, it's just a dramatic spread of how different the costs can be and how hard it is to get, because not all areas, like I said, where we live, the closest one is an hour and a half away. So,
and I know one piece of that is just like the cost of living standards can vary so widely in different areas. And, I really think that the clinicians deserve to get paid well.
Oh, absolutely.
And I also want to make this affordable for everyone, which is, why we're here doing what we're doing with Thank You Life.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not an easy business model to make it work on all ends. And the more things like getting the VA coverage and, potentially at some point getting insurance or, even Medicare to cover something like this could really just change the game for a lot of people. And again, that's what Kimberly and Healing Our Heroes is trying to do. And that's what we're trying to do here at Thank You Life. And thank you for speaking to that piece a little bit too. I'm very much in the trenches, so to speak, with this industry, but it's also great to hear from the people on the front lines in the way that you are, like, using this treatment and really kind of going about a lot of different ways of figuring out how to get access.
And when we were overseas, in Lisbon, Portugal, we were able to access the intake for $85 in each treatment in a hospital bed for $250 per treatment.
Wow.
And a very, but my sister-in-law went to the emergency room while we were there, and her total cost was $85, and that included the prescriptions for a gallbladder attack.
Wow.
So it's again, a very different model. What's the cost of living? But what we are used to here in America is what we're used to, and it's our business model, and it's what we've all bought into. It's what we were raised in. It's the tea we are steeped in. We don't really know about other choices, but when you're in a fixed income or in a low or no income place, like our daughter is in a place where she can't afford any of this, and she's on Medicaid, and Medicare or Medicaid doesn't cover any of this. So it's like, how do we get her this help? So I'm grateful to organizations like Thank You Life and places that sponsor and places that help us get to the treatment, and then hopefully bring us to a place where we can pay it forward. I want to make sure that the people coming behind me can access this care. And when organizations like you sponsor, Healing Our Heroes, you make it possible for me to think one day soon I'll be in a place where I can figure out how to keep those resources going and moving ahead for other people in distress, because we got to knock this road rage business down. And that's where it all manifests. It's on the highways.
Totally. And I love that. And, that's very much where me and my team come from too, is that we received our own healing. And, for me specifically, again, also a lot of our team is, I was in a position where I was not able to afford a lot of the treatments that I received. And when I was able to, really start a career and then be in more of a position, I was like, okay, cool. Now I can do something to pay it forward. And I love the like kind of urge to pay it forward just seems so kind of inherent in this work, which is really beautiful to me. It's something that seems so instinctual about just being human, is once we can get our head above water enough, we start looking around, who else is drowning? Who else is drowning? Because I was once drowning.
And look at where you are now. Yeah. Talking to somebody who's getting their hands above water. I'll get there. Yeah. So thank you for all of the behind the scenes things that happen, that we'll never know about, that you put together. It makes me smile and weep at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's so this is just our second episode that we've recorded. The first one was with my co-founder, Dr. Dan, and so this is our first one really getting to interview a participant, and I really appreciate getting to hear the ins and outs of like how much you're really doing your own work, and that promise that we're talking about. My hope is that a lot of people get to hear this who maybe have not been able to start their healing journey, but I also hope a lot of people who have begun their healing journey can listen to this and just get a bit of a blueprint of like what it can really mean to engage in their own work and their own healing. So thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing everything that you did. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we pause?
I just feel immense gratitude for the time that you've made for us here. And I thank you for the questions and the answers in this space.
Yeah. You're welcome, and thank you too.
All right.
Thank you too.
Fellow traveler.
Thank you for tuning in to the Thank You Life podcast. If you would like to get involved with our mission and help more people in need access ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, please consider becoming a monthly supporter. Donations are the sole means through which we provide financial assistance to our beneficiaries, and we currently have close to 1,000 people in need on our waitlist. This work could not happen without our generous supporters, so if you've been touched by hearing these stories of healing and want to make an impact, please consider visiting our website, thankyoulife.org, and becoming a monthly supporter.